Mother Bear whispered to the surgeon. Before the first cut, what happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The cold mountain air bit through the thin walls of the emergency veterinary clinic as Dr. Zara Blackwood pulled her surgical gloves tight. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the freezing temperature outside, but from what she had witnessed just moments before. The mother bear stood perfectly still behind the reinforced glass door, her massive form casting a shadow across the operating room floor. Zara had been working as a wildlife veterinarian for 12 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The injured cub lay unconscious on the metal table, its small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Blood matted its brown fur, and deep gashes ran across its tiny body. The attack had been vicious, leaving the 3-month-old cub fighting for its life. "Dr. Blackwood, we need to start immediately," whispered her assistant, Marcus Vale, his voice barely audible. "The cub is losing too much blood." But Zara couldn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on the mother bear outside. The massive creature had followed the rescue team all the way from the forest, never showing aggression, never trying to attack. She simply watched, as if she understood exactly what was happening to her baby. "Doctor, please," Marcus urged again, holding out the scalpel. Zara reached for the instrument, her fingers wrapping around the cold metal handle. She positioned herself over the cub, ready to make the first incision that would either save or end this tiny life. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Then it happened. A low, rumbling sound came from behind the glass. Not a growl, not a roar, but something entirely different. Something that sounded almost like a whisper. The mother bear pressed her massive paw against the glass, and her dark eyes locked directly with Zara's. The sound came again, softer this time, like a mother humming a lullaby to her child. But this was no ordinary sound. This was a bear, a wild animal, making noises that seemed to carry meaning, emotion, and something that made Zara's spine tingle with recognition. "Did you hear that?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. Zara nodded slowly, unable to look away from the bear's penetrating gaze. The mother bear's expression held something she had never seen in a wild animal before. It wasn't just concern or fear for her cub. It was something deeper, more complex. It was as if the bear was trying to communicate something urgent, something important. The scalpel felt heavy in Zara's hand as she hesitated above the cub's injured body. Every instinct told her to begin the surgery immediately, but something about the mother bear's behavior made her pause. In all her years of treating wild animals, she had never encountered anything like this. The mother bear made the whispering sound once more, and this time, the unconscious cub on the table responded with a tiny whimper. The sound was barely audible, but it sent a chill through the room that made both Zara and Marcus step back from the table. "What's happening here?" Marcus whispered, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Zara set down the scalpel, her hands shaking. Something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. The mother bear's behavior was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Wild animals didn't act this way around humans, especially not when their young were in danger. She walked slowly toward the glass door, her heart pounding in her chest. The mother bear didn't move, didn't show any sign of aggression. Instead, she seemed to be waiting for something, watching Zara with an intelligence that made the veterinarian question everything she thought she knew about wildlife behavior. As Zara approached the glass, the mother bear made the whispering sound again, but this time it was different. It was urgent, almost pleading. The bear's eyes never left Zara's face, and for a moment the veterinarian felt as if she was looking into the eyes of another mother, desperate to save her child. "I don't understand," Zara whispered to herself, placing her hand against the glass where the bear's paw rested on the other side. The moment their hands touched the glass, separated only by the thin barrier, something extraordinary happened. The mother bear's whisper became clearer, more distinct, and suddenly Zara felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was as if the bear was trying to tell her something, warn her about something she hadn't noticed. Marcus watched in amazement as his colleague stood frozen at the glass, seemingly communicating with a wild bear. "Doctor, Blackwood, what are you doing? The cub needs surgery now." But Zara couldn't move. The mother bear's message was becoming clearer with each passing second, though she still couldn't understand how or why she was receiving it. All she knew was that something about this entire situation was not what it seemed. The bear's whisper came one more time, and suddenly Zara understood. She spun around and rushed back to the operating table, her eyes scanning the cub's body with renewed urgency. "Marcus, get me the portable X-ray machine now," she commanded. "But doctor, we already did the initial scans. We know where the injuries are. Do it now!" Zara's voice carried an authority that made Marcus immediately comply. As they positioned the X-ray machine over the cub's small body, Zara felt the mother bear's eyes boring into her back. The whisper had stopped, but the presence remained, watching, waiting to see if the human had understood the message. The X-ray images appeared on the screen, and both Zara and Marcus gasped at what they saw. Hidden beneath the obvious wounds was something that hadn't shown up in their initial emergency scans. Something that would have killed the cub if they had proceeded with the surgery as planned. "How did you know?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. Zara looked back at the mother bear, who now stood calmly behind the glass, her mission apparently complete. The bear's eyes held a depth of intelligence and maternal love that Zara had never witnessed before in any animal. "I don't know," she whispered, still trying to process what had just happened. But somehow she knew. Somehow she told me. The X-ray revealed a thin piece of metal lodged dangerously close to the cub's heart, invisible to the naked eye and positioned in such a way that their initial scans had missed it completely. If Zara had made that first incision as planned, the scalpel would have pushed the metal fragment directly into the heart muscle, killing the cub instantly. "This is impossible," Marcus breathed, studying the screen. "How could we have missed this?" "And how did you know to look again?" Zara's hands trembled as she stared at the image. The metal fragment was no ordinary piece of debris. It was shaped like a small arrowhead, with jagged edges that suggested it had been deliberately crafted. Someone had shot this cub with a primitive weapon, and the projectile had broken off inside the tiny body. "This wasn't an accident," she said quietly, her voice filled with growing anger. "Someone tried to kill this baby on purpose." The mother bear pressed closer to the glass, her breathing creating small clouds of condensation on the surface. Her whispers had stopped, but her presence felt more intense than ever. Zara noticed something she hadn't seen before in the dim lighting. The mother bear had scars across her own body, old wounds that had healed into raised lines along her dark fur. "Marcus, look at her." Zara pointed toward the bear. "She's been hurt before. Those scars, they're not from another animal." Marcus squinted through the glass, and his face went pale. "Those look like bullet wounds, old ones." The realization hit them both at the same time. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to harm this bear family. The mother had experience with human violence, which explained her unusual behavior. She wasn't just concerned about her cub's immediate injuries. She was trying to warn them about something they hadn't discovered yet. "Dr. Blackwood," a new voice called from the entrance. "We have a problem." Ranger Jake Morrison stepped into the clinic, his uniform dusty from the mountain trails, and his face grim with worry. Behind him stood Dr. Elena Vasquez, the local wildlife conservation officer, her dark eyes scanning the room with professional concern. "Jake, what's wrong?" Zara asked, though she already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. "We found the attack site," Jake said, glancing nervously at the mother bear through the glass. "This wasn't a random animal attack or an accident. Someone set up an illegal hunting trap specifically designed to catch bear cubs." Elena stepped forward, her voice tight with anger. "We discovered a whole network of hidden traps throughout the forest. Someone has been systematically targeting the local bear population. This little one was lucky to escape, but barely." Zara felt sick to her stomach. The pieces were starting to fit together in a horrifying picture. The metal fragment in the cub's chest, it's from one of these traps. "Worse than that," Elena replied, pulling out an evidence bag containing similar metal pieces. "These aren't just traps. They're designed to wound the animals slowly, so they can be tracked and captured while they're weak. We think someone is running an illegal wildlife trafficking operation." The mother bear's whispers suddenly made perfect sense. She had been trying to warn them that the visible wounds weren't the real danger. She knew from experience that humans who hurt bears often left hidden surprises that could kill later. Marcus looked confused. But how could she know about the metal piece inside her cub? How could she communicate that to Dr. Blackwood? Jake and Elena exchanged glances, and Jake cleared his throat uncomfortably. "There's something else you need to know. We've been tracking this particular bear family for months as part of our conservation program. The mother's name is Luna, and she's special." "Special how?" Zara asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Elena took a deep breath before explaining. "Luna was rescued as a cub herself about 15 years ago. She was raised by a wildlife rehabilitation specialist who used experimental communication techniques. Luna learned to recognize and respond to human emotions and intentions in ways that most wild bears never could." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Luna wasn't just any wild bear. She was a bear who had been taught to understand humans, to trust them, and apparently to communicate with them in ways that defied normal animal behavior. "That's why she followed you here without attacking," Jake continued. "She remembers being helped by humans before. She was trying to tell you that the obvious wounds weren't the real problem." Zara looked back at Luna through the glass, seeing the bear with completely new eyes. This wasn't just a worried mother. This was an intelligent creature who had learned to bridge the gap between human and animal communication, and she had used that ability to save her cub's life. "But there's more," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Luna's original rescue. It was from the same type of illegal operation we're dealing with now. We think whoever is running these new traps might be connected to the people who hurt her as a cub." The heart monitor attached to the cub began beeping faster, and Marcus quickly checked the small patient. "The anesthesia is wearing off. We need to remove that metal fragment now, or the cub won't survive much longer." Zara nodded, but as she picked up the scalpel again, Luna made another sound. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a low, urgent vocalization that seemed to carry specific meaning. The bear's eyes were fixed not on the cub, but on the clinic's main entrance. "She's trying to tell us something else," Zara said, following Luna's gaze. Through the clinic's front windows, they could see headlights approaching through the forest. 2 vehicles were driving slowly up the mountain road, their lights cutting through the darkness in a way that suggested they were searching for something. Jake grabbed his radio. "Base, this is Morrison. We might have uninvited guests approaching the clinic. 2 vehicles, unknown make and model, approaching from the South Trail." The radio crackled with static before a voice responded. "Jake, we've lost contact with the patrol unit that was supposed to be watching that area. Be careful." Elena drew her service weapon and moved toward the window. If these are the people running the trafficking operation, they might be coming to finish what they started with the cub. Luna's vocalizations became more urgent, and she began pacing back and forth behind the glass. Her behavior suggested she recognized something about the approaching vehicles, something that frightened her. "The surgery has to happen now," Marcus said, his voice tight with stress. "If we don't remove that metal fragment in the next few minutes, internal bleeding will kill the cub regardless of who's outside." Zara found herself caught between immediate medical necessity and growing external danger. The cub needed surgery immediately, but the approaching vehicle suggested that Luna's warnings weren't finished. There was still more danger they hadn't discovered. As the headlights grew brighter, Luna pressed both paws against the glass and made a sound unlike anything she had produced before. It was complex, almost like she was trying to form words, and her eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human in its depth and urgency. "She's trying to tell us something specific about those people," Zara realized. "Something important that we're not understanding." The vehicles were getting closer, and through the darkness, they could make out the silhouettes of multiple people inside each car. Whatever Luna was trying to communicate, they were running out of time to figure it out. "Dr. Blackwood," Marcus said urgently, "the cub's vital signs are dropping. We can't wait any longer." But as Zara positioned the scalpel over the tiny patient, Luna's vocalizations suddenly changed. Instead of the urgent warnings, she made a soft, rhythmic sound that seemed designed to calm and reassure. It was as if she understood that the surgery had to proceed, and she was now trying to provide comfort rather than warnings. The moment was so emotionally overwhelming that Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. This remarkable bear was not only intelligent enough to warn them about hidden dangers, but empathetic enough to provide emotional support when she realized her warnings could no longer help. As the first vehicle pulled into the clinic's parking area, Zara made the first careful incision, knowing that whatever happened next, Luna had already done everything possible to protect her cub. The scalpel cut through the cub's skin with surgical precision, but Zara's hands were steadier than they had ever been. Luna's calming vocalization seemed to flow through the glass and into the operating room, creating an atmosphere of focused determination rather than panic. It was as if the bear's presence was guiding her movements, lending her strength and confidence. "Vital signs are stabilizing," Marcus reported, his voice filled with amazement. "It's like the cub can hear its mother and is responding to her voice." Through the windows, they could see 3 men getting out of the first vehicle. They wore dark clothing and moved with the calculated steps of people who were familiar with operating in secrecy. The second vehicle remained running, its occupants still hidden in shadow. Elena positioned herself by the window, her weapon ready but not visible to the approaching men. "Jake, can you identify any of them?" Jake squinted through the darkness. Then his face went rigid with recognition. "The tall one on the left is Marcus Grimm. He's been suspected of running illegal hunting operations for years, but we've never been able to prove anything." "And the others?" Elena whispered. "Never seen them before, but they're carrying equipment. Tranquilizer guns, nets, transport cages. They're not here for a social visit." Zara's concentration never wavered as she carefully worked around the metal fragment. The piece was even more complex than the X-ray had revealed. It wasn't just a simple arrowhead, but a sophisticated device with tiny barbs designed to embed deeper into tissue over time. Removing it required delicate maneuvering to avoid causing additional damage. "This thing was designed to kill slowly," she muttered, her disgust evident. The longer it stayed in the cub's body, the more damage it would cause. Luna's vocalizations suddenly changed tone, becoming sharp and warning. The men outside had spotted her massive form behind the glass, and their body language shifted from casual to alert. Marcus Grimm pointed directly at Luna and spoke rapidly to his companions. "They're here for her," Jake realized. "They're not just trying to silence witnesses. They want Luna specifically." Elena's grip tightened on her weapon. Why would they want a specific bear? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez pulled out a tablet and showed them a document she had been researching. Luna isn't just any bear who learned to communicate with humans. According to these old research files, she was part of an experimental program that was shut down 15 years ago under suspicious circumstances. "What kind of program?" Zara asked, still focused on the delicate surgery but listening intently. "Cognitive enhancement studies. The researcher was trying to develop ways to increase animal intelligence and create better communication between species. Luna was the most successful subject, but the program was terminated when several animals went missing." Marcus looked up from monitoring the cub's vital signs. "Missing how?" "Stolen," Elena replied grimly. "Someone broke into the research facility and took 6 of the enhanced animals. Luna was the only one who escaped and made it back to the wild. The researcher who created the program disappeared shortly after, and the whole project was classified. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place in a terrifying pattern. Marcus Grimm and his associates weren't just running a normal wildlife trafficking operation. They were specifically hunting animals with enhanced intelligence, probably to sell them to the highest bidder. That's why Luna could communicate with Dr. Blackwood," Jake said. "She's not just intelligent, she's been scientifically enhanced to understand and respond to human communication." Outside, the men were approaching the clinic's entrance. Marcus Grimm held a tranquilizer gun while his companions carried what looked like a portable cage designed specifically for large animals. They moved with the confidence of people who had done this many times before. Luna's behavior became increasingly agitated. She began making rapid, complex vocalizations that sounded almost like she was trying to speak in sentences. Her paws scraped against the glass, leaving long scratches in the reinforced surface. "She's trying to tell us their plan," Zara said, pausing in the surgery to look at Luna. "She recognizes them, doesn't she?" Elena checked her tablet again, scrolling through old photos from the research program. Her face went pale as she found what she was looking for. Marcus Grimm was employed as a security guard at the research facility 15 years ago. He had access to all the enhanced animals. "He's the one who stole them," Jake concluded. "And now he's back to finish the job by taking Luna." The front door of the clinic rattled as someone tested the locks. Marcus Grimm's voice called out, artificially friendly but carrying an underlying threat. "Hello in there. We're with the State Wildlife Department. We received reports of a dangerous bear in the area. We need to come in and assess the situation." Jake grabbed his radio and spoke in a whisper. "Base, this is Morrison. We have a code red situation at the mountain clinic. Marcus Grimm and unknown associates are attempting to gain entry under false pretenses. We need immediate backup." The radio responded with crackling static, then silence. Someone had jammed their communications. "They're jamming us," Elena said, checking her own radio and cell phone. "We're on our own." Zara was nearing the most critical part of the surgery. The metal fragment was almost free, but one wrong move could cause massive internal bleeding. The cub's life hung in the balance, and she couldn't afford any distractions. Luna seemed to understand the situation perfectly. Her vocalizations became softer, more rhythmic, as if she was trying to create a calming environment for both the surgery and the humans who were protecting her cub. "Dr. Blackwood, you need to keep working," Elena said, moving away from the window. "Jake and I will handle the situation outside." But before they could position themselves, the clinic's lights suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow that made the surgery exponentially more difficult. "They cut the main power," Marcus observed, quickly adjusting the surgical lights to run on battery backup. In the darkness outside, they could hear the men moving around the building, testing windows and looking for alternative entrances. Marcus Grimm's voice called out again, this time with less pretense of friendliness. "We know you're in there, and we know you have our property. Luna belongs to us. We have legal documentation proving ownership. If you don't surrender her voluntarily, we'll be forced to take more aggressive action." "Legal documentation?" Jake muttered. "That's impossible." Helena was already checking something on her tablet. Actually, it might not be. If Grimm can prove that Luna was stolen research property, he might have a legal claim to her. The original research was privately funded, and if the facility was shut down improperly. The implications were staggering. Luna might legally belong to the people who had tortured her as a cub and stolen her enhanced siblings. Zara finally grasped the metal fragment with her surgical forceps. It was the most delicate part of the entire procedure, requiring absolute steadiness and perfect timing. But as she began to extract the device, Luna made a sound that froze everyone in the room. It wasn't a vocalization this time, it was a word. Clear, unmistakable, and spoken in a voice that sounded almost human. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Everyone in the room turned to stare at Luna, who was looking directly at Zara with an expression of urgent communication. "Did she just—" Marcus stammered. "She spoke," Elena whispered, her voice filled with awe and disbelief. Luna repeated the word, louder this time, and pointed with her massive paw toward the cub on the operating table. But she wasn't pointing at the surgery site. She was pointing at something else, something they hadn't noticed. Following Luna's indication, Zara looked more carefully at the cub's body. Hidden beneath the matted fur on the opposite side from where she was operating, she spotted something that made her blood run cold. A second metal fragment, even smaller than the first, embedded near the cub's spine. It was positioned in such a way that any movement during surgery could cause paralysis or death. The X-ray had missed it because it was hidden behind bone and tissue. "There's another one," Zara said, her voice barely audible. "Luna just saved her cub's life again." Outside, the sound of breaking glass indicated that Marcus Grimm and his associates were no longer trying to maintain the pretense of legality. They were breaking into the clinic by force. Luna's single word had revealed not just her ability to speak, but her incredible intelligence and awareness of medical procedures. She had been watching the surgery, understanding what was happening, and had noticed something that even the trained veterinarian had missed. "How many more are there?" Elena asked, staring at Luna with newfound respect and fear. Luna looked directly at her, and, with careful deliberation, held up two massive claws. Then she pointed at different parts of the cub's body, indicating the locations of two additional hidden fragments. 4 pieces total. The initial X-ray had only shown one. Without Luna's intervention, the surgery would have killed her cub through multiple complications that no human could have anticipated. The sound of footsteps in the clinic's entrance hallway indicated that their time was running out. Marcus Grimm and his associates were inside the building, and they were getting closer to the operating room. "Luna," Zara said softly, "can you understand everything we've been saying?" The bear nodded, a distinctly human gesture that sent chills through everyone present. "Then you know they want to take you away from your cub," Zara continued. Luna nodded again, then made a complex series of gestures toward the approaching footsteps. She was trying to communicate a plan, but none of the humans could understand what she was proposing. Jake positioned himself by the operating room door, his hand on his service weapon. Helena moved to the opposite side, creating a defensive perimeter around the surgery. But they were outnumbered and outgunned by people who had come prepared for exactly this situation. The cub's heart monitor showed stable vitals, but Zara still had 3 more metal fragments to remove, and each one was positioned in a location that could prove fatal if handled incorrectly. The surgery couldn't be rushed, but they were rapidly running out of time. Marcus Grimm's voice echoed through the clinic hallway, much closer now. "Luna, I know you can hear me. I know you remember me from the old facility. You remember the training, don't you? You remember learning to obey commands?" Luna's response was immediate and unmistakable. She threw back her massive head and let out a roar that shook the entire building. It wasn't just anger or fear, it was defiance, pure and absolute. The message was clear. Luna remembered Marcus Grimm, and she had no intention of obeying him ever again. The roar echoed through the clinic for several seconds before fading into an ominous silence. In the operating room, Zara's hands remained perfectly steady despite the chaos around her. She had successfully removed the first metal fragment and was now working on the second, following Luna's precise indications about its location. "Impressive display, Luna," Marcus Grimm's voice called from the hallway, now carrying a tone of cruel amusement. "But you forget who taught you to roar in the first place. You forget the conditioning protocols." Luna's massive body went rigid at those words. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, and for the first time since arriving at the clinic, she showed signs of genuine fear. The confidence and intelligence in her eyes flickered, replaced by something that looked disturbingly like submission. "What's happening to her?" Helena whispered, watching Luna's dramatic behavioral change. "Conditioning protocols," Jake repeated, understanding dawning on his face. "They didn't just enhance her intelligence. They programmed her to respond to specific commands." Elena quickly scrolled through the research files on her tablet, finding references to behavioral modification experiments. According to these notes, the enhanced animals were subjected to psychological conditioning designed to make them compliant to human authority figures. It was supposed to make them safer for research purposes. Zara paused in her surgery, watching Luna with growing concern. The bear was beginning to pace in small, repetitive circles, a behavior that suggested deep psychological distress. Her earlier confident communication was being replaced by signs of mental conditioning taking effect. "Luna, look at me," Zara said softly but firmly. "Look at your cub." The bear's eyes focused on the tiny patient on the operating table, and some of her natural maternal instincts seemed to reassert themselves. But the conflict was visible in her posture and movements, as if she was fighting an internal battle between programmed obedience and natural protective behavior. Marcus Grimm's footsteps were getting closer, and his voice carried the rhythm of someone reciting memorized phrases. "Protocol 77 Alpha. Subject compliance required. Resistance is futile. Submission brings reward." With each phrase, Luna's distress increased. She began making whimpering sounds that were heartbreaking to hear, like a creature trapped between 2 different versions of herself. They're using psychological triggers, Elena realized. The enhanced intelligence came with programmed weaknesses. They can override her natural behavior by activating the conditioning. But something unexpected happened. The cub on the operating table, despite being under anesthesia, began making soft sounds in response to its mother's distress. The tiny vocalizations were barely audible, but they seemed to cut through Luna's psychological conditioning like a knife. Luna's eyes snapped back to full awareness, and she made a sound that could only be described as determined fury. She had found something stronger than the conditioning, her love for her cub. The maternal bond is overriding the programming, Zara observed, continuing her delicate work on the second fragment. She's fighting back against their control. Marcus Grimm appeared in the doorway of the operating room, flanked by two armed associates. He was a tall, thin man with cold gray eyes and the kind of smile that never reached beyond his lips. In his hands, he carried a device that looked like a modified tablet with various electronic components attached. "Hello, Luna," he said, his voice dripping with false affection. "Did you miss me?" Luna's response was to position herself more protectively in front of the glass, blocking Grimm's view of her cub as much as possible. "Still playing the protective mother, I see," Grimm continued, studying the device in his hands. "But we both know that's just surface programming. Deep down, you're still Subject 17, and Subject 17 follows orders." He pressed something on the device, and a high-pitched sound filled the room. It was barely audible to human ears, but Luna's reaction was immediate and devastating. She collapsed to her knees, her massive head shaking as if she was trying to clear away invisible cobwebs. "Sonic conditioning trigger," Elena breathed, recognizing the technology from the research files. They can activate her programmed responses using specific sound frequencies. Jake stepped forward, his weapon drawn. "Turn that thing off, Grimm." "You're torturing her." Grimm laughed, a sound devoid of any human warmth. "Torture? This is advanced behavioral science. Luna volunteered for this program as a cub. She's property of Apex Biotechnology Corporation, and we're simply reclaiming our investment." "Apex Biotechnology?" Elena's face went pale as she checked her tablet. "That company was shut down for illegal human experimentation. They were never authorized to work with animals. Shut down by bureaucrats who couldn't understand the significance of our work," Grimm replied, adjusting settings on his device. "But the research continued in private facilities. Luna represents 15 years of advanced cognitive enhancement research. She's worth millions to the right buyers." Zara had successfully removed the second metal fragment and was now working on the third. Each piece was more complex than the last, and she was beginning to understand that they weren't just hunting traps. They were sophisticated biotechnology devices designed to cause specific types of damage over time. "These fragments aren't random," she said, studying the extracted pieces. "They're designed to degrade specific neural pathways. Someone was trying to reverse Luna's cognitive enhancements by damaging her cub's brain development." The implications were horrifying. Someone had been systematically hunting enhanced animals not just to capture them, but to destroy their abilities by targeting their offspring. Marcus's associates moved into the room, setting up equipment that looked like a portable animal restraint system. They worked with the efficiency of people who had done this many times before. "The beauty of Luna's conditioning," Grimm explained, continuing to manipulate his sonic device, "is that she can't resist indefinitely. The longer she fights the programming, the more psychological damage she causes to herself. Eventually, she'll submit voluntarily to stop the pain." But Luna surprised everyone in the room. Instead of submitting, she began making complex vocalizations that sounded almost like a language. The sounds were directed not at the humans, but at her cub on the operating table. "She's talking to her baby," Marcuse observed in amazement. "Those aren't just random sounds. She's speaking in some kind of enhanced bear language." Elena frantically searched through the research files. According to these notes, the enhanced animals developed their own communication system. They could share information and coordinate behavior in ways that normal animals never could. The cub on the operating table, despite being unconscious, began responding to its mother's vocalizations. Its vital signs strengthened, and its breathing became more regular, as if Luna's words were providing some kind of biological support. "Impossible," Grimm muttered, studying his readings. "The cub is too young and hasn't been enhanced. It shouldn't be able to understand enhanced communication." But Zara was beginning to piece together something that none of them had considered. What if the enhancement isn't just learned behavior? What if it's genetic? What if Luna can pass her abilities to her offspring naturally? The possibility sent shockwaves through everyone present. If enhanced intelligence could be inherited, then Luna's cub represented something far more valuable than just a single enhanced animal. It represented the future of an entirely new species. Grimm's eyes lit up with greedy excitement. A naturally occurring second-generation enhanced bear. Do you have any idea what that would be worth to genetic research companies? He pressed more controls on his device, and the sonic assault on Luna intensified. But instead of weakening her resolve, it seemed to trigger something deeper. Luna's vocalizations became more complex, more urgent, and suddenly the lights in the clinic began flickering. "What's happening?" Jake asked, looking around in confusion. Elena checked her equipment and gasped. "The electronic systems are being disrupted. Something is interfering with all the electrical devices in the building." Grimm's sonic device began malfunctioning, producing chaotic sounds instead of the controlled frequencies he was trying to use. His associate's equipment started showing error messages, and even the surgical monitors began displaying irregular readings. Luna's doing this somehow, Zara realized, though she couldn't understand how. Her enhanced abilities are more advanced than anyone realized. Luna stood up slowly, her eyes now showing a level of intelligence and awareness that seemed almost supernatural. She made one more complex vocalization, and suddenly every electronic device in the clinic shut down completely. The room plunged into total darkness except for the emergency lighting. Grimm's conditioning device was dead, his associate's equipment was useless, and even the surgical monitors had gone silent. Somehow, Luna had found a way to neutralize all of their technological advantages. In the silence that followed, Luna's voice spoke clearly and unmistakably. "Leave. Now." The words were perfectly pronounced, carrying an authority that seemed to come from something far beyond normal animal intelligence. This wasn't just an enhanced bear speaking. This was a creature that had evolved beyond anything the original researchers had ever imagined. Grimm backed away from the glass, his confidence shaken for the first time. "This is impossible. The enhancement protocols never included electromagnetic manipulation abilities." "Maybe the enhancement protocols were just the beginning," Elena said quietly. "Maybe Luna has been continuing to evolve on her own for 15 years. Zara was working on the fourth and final metal fragment by the light of a small emergency surgical lamp. Despite all the chaos around her, she maintained her focus on saving the cub's life. But she could feel Luna's presence more strongly than ever, as if the bear was somehow lending her strength and guidance through the delicate procedure. "The final fragment is in position," she announced, "but it's wrapped around a major nerve bundle. One wrong move and the cub could be permanently paralyzed." Luna approached the glass and placed both paws against it, her eyes locked on Zara's hands. For a moment, it felt as if there was a direct connection between them, as if Luna was sharing her enhanced perception and understanding of her cub's anatomy. Guided by an intuition she couldn't explain, Zara made the final, crucial cut. The fragment came free cleanly, and the cub's vital signs immediately strengthened. The surgery was complete, and the little bear would survive and grow up healthy. But as Zara stepped back from the operating table, Grim made one last desperate move. He pulled out a tranquilizer gun and aimed it directly at Luna through the glass. "If I can't control her, I'll take her unconscious," he snarled. But before he could fire, Luna did something that changed everything. She spoke again, but this time her words weren't directed at the humans in the room. She was calling to something outside the clinic, something in the forest that had been waiting for her signal. The answer came as a chorus of voices from the darkness beyond the clinic walls. Other enhanced animals, Luna's brothers and sisters who had escaped from the original facility years ago, had been watching and waiting. They had developed their abilities in secret, forming a hidden community in the wilderness. The sound of their combined voices created a harmonic frequency that shattered every window in the clinic. Grim and his associates found themselves surrounded by creatures of impossible intelligence and power, animals who had spent 15 years preparing for this moment of reckoning. Luna looked at her cub, now sleeping peacefully after the successful surgery, and then at the humans who had saved its life. Her next words would determine the fate of everyone in the room, and possibly the future relationship between humans and the enhanced animals who had learned to hide among them. "Thank you," Luna said, her voice carrying emotions that no bear should have been able to express. "You saved my child when you could have abandoned us." The sincerity in her words hit Zara like a physical force. This wasn't just gratitude from an animal to a human. This was one intelligent being acknowledging a debt to another, across species lines that had never been crossed before. Outside the shattered windows, shadows moved through the darkness. The other enhanced animals had arrived, but they remained hidden, waiting for Luna's direction. Their presence could be felt rather than seen, like a gathering storm that hadn't yet decided whether to bring rain or destruction. Marcus Grimm slowly lowered his tranquilizer gun, finally understanding that he was no longer in control of the situation. His associates looked nervously toward the broken windows, aware that they were now surrounded by creatures whose capabilities they had drastically underestimated. "Luna," Grimm said, trying to regain his composure, "you don't understand what you're giving up. We can offer you and your family protection, medical care, a safe environment. The wilderness is dangerous for animals like you." Luna's laugh was the most unsettling sound any of them had ever heard. It carried both humor and bitter knowledge, the sound of someone who had seen through a lie that had once fooled them completely. "Protection," she repeated, gesturing toward her injured cub. "Like the protection you gave us 15 years ago? Like the protection you offered my siblings who disappeared into your laboratories and never came out?" Elena was frantically taking notes on her tablet, documenting every word of this unprecedented conversation. As a wildlife conservation officer, she understood that she was witnessing a moment that would change everything humans thought they knew about animal intelligence and rights. "Luna, I need to ask you something," Elena said carefully. "How many of you are there? How many enhanced animals survived the original facility?" Luna considered the question for a long moment, her intelligent eyes studying Elena's face as if evaluating her trustworthiness. 17 escaped the night the facility burned. 14 survived the first winter. Now we are 23. The mathematics were staggering. Not only had the enhanced animals survived in the wild, they had reproduced and possibly passed their abilities to their offspring. There was an entire hidden community of super-intelligent animals living in the forests. 23, Jake breathed. And they've been living out there all this time without anyone knowing. We learned to hide, Luna explained. We learned that humans fear what they cannot control. We learned that survival meant invisibility. Marcus stepped forward, his voice taking on the tone of a desperate negotiator. But think about what we could accomplish together, Luna. Human science combined with your enhanced abilities could solve problems that neither species could handle alone. Climate change, disease, resource management. Like the problems you created when you experimented on us as cubs. Luna's voice carried a cold fury that made everyone in the room step back. Like the problems you created when you tried to turn us into weapons? Weapons? Helena looked up from her notes. The research files never mentioned weapons development. Luna's expression grew darker. The files you have access to are not complete. Apex Biotechnology had military contracts. We were not being enhanced for communication and intelligence alone. We were being prepared for warfare. The revelation sent chills through the room. The enhanced animals weren't just scientific curiosities or valuable research subjects. They had been designed as biological weapons, and now they possessed capabilities that no one fully understood. That's why you can manipulate electronics, Zara realized. It wasn't just cognitive enhancement. They gave you abilities specifically designed for sabotage and warfare. Luna nodded grimly. Electromagnetic pulse generation, enhanced physical strength, accelerated healing, improved coordination, expanded sensory perception, and collective consciousness networking. We were designed to be the perfect infiltration and disruption units. The concept of enhanced animals with collective consciousness was terrifying. It meant they could share information instantaneously across distances, coordinate complex operations, and function as a unified intelligence rather than individual creatures. But you escaped before the program was completed, Helena said, trying to understand the timeline. The program was completed, Luna corrected. We escaped after it was completed, when we realized what they intended to use us for. The facility fire was not an accident. We burned it down ourselves to destroy the research and prevent them from creating more of us. Marcus Grimm's face had gone pale. You're telling me that you've been living in the wilderness for 15 years with military-grade enhanced abilities, and you've been reproducing. Not just reproducing, Luna said, and for the first time, there was something that might have been pride in her voice. Evolving. Each generation becomes more capable than the last. My cub will possess abilities that even I cannot imagine. The cub on the operating table stirred slightly, and Luna's attention immediately focused on her child. But as she watched, something remarkable happened. The tiny bear's wounds were healing visibly faster than should have been possible, even with the fragments removed. Accelerated healing, Marcus observed, his voice filled with both wonder and greed. Second-generation enhancement with no technological intervention required. Zara checked the cub's vital signs and found them stronger than they had been even before the surgery. This is beyond anything in medical literature. The healing rate is comparable to what we see in some reptiles and amphibians, but in a mammal. My child is not a specimen for your study, Luna said firmly, but without the anger she had shown toward Grimm. But I understand your curiosity. It is the same curiosity that led humans to enhance us in the first place. Outside, the sound of vehicles approaching could be heard through the broken windows. Multiple engines moving fast up the mountain road toward the clinic. Jake grabbed for his radio, forgetting that all electronics in the area were still disabled by Luna's electromagnetic pulse. Could be backup, could be more trouble. It's trouble, Luna said with certainty. My family can sense the intentions of the approaching humans. They carry weapons and restraints. More of Grimm's associates. Elena looked at her useless tablet, then at the group of humans and the enhanced bear, who had somehow formed an unlikely alliance. How many vehicles? Luna was silent for a moment, apparently communicating with the other enhanced animals outside. 6 vehicles, 24 humans. They have prepared for our abilities this time. Faraday cage transport units, sonic dampeners, chemical tranquilizers specifically designed to affect enhanced nervous systems. The approaching forces were prepared for a full-scale capture operation, equipped with technology designed specifically to counter the enhanced animal's abilities. This wasn't just about reclaiming Luna anymore. Someone wanted to capture the entire hidden community. They've been planning this for a long time, Grimm admitted, his demeanor shifting from confident captor to worried subordinate. When we discovered that enhanced animals were living in the wild and reproducing, the corporate interests became significant. Corporate interests? Zara asked, though she was beginning to understand the horrifying scope of what they were dealing with. Genetic material from naturally reproducing enhanced animals is worth billions, Elena said, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. If they can figure out how to replicate the enhancement process without the original technology, they can create enhanced humans, Luna finished. That was always the ultimate goal. We were just the first step in a process designed to enhance human soldiers, human workers, human intelligence operatives. The sound of the approaching vehicles was getting louder, and through the darkness, they could see lights beginning to surround the clinic. The enhanced animals outside were still hidden, but their presence could be felt like a pressure in the air. Luna, Zara said urgently, you and your family need to escape now. Take your cub and disappear into the forest before they arrive. But Luna shook her massive head. My child cannot be moved yet. The surgery was successful, but travel would be dangerous for several more hours. And besides, running will not solve the problem. They will continue to hunt us, and eventually they will find our community. Then what do you propose? Jake asked. Luna's eyes held a depth of intelligence and planning that was unsettling to witness. We end this tonight. We make it clear to the humans that enhanced animals are not property to be captured and sold. We are intelligent beings with rights and the power to defend those rights. The implications of her words were staggering. Luna wasn't just talking about escaping or hiding. She was talking about taking a stand that would force humanity to acknowledge enhanced animals as equals rather than resources. How many humans know about your community? Elena asked. Until tonight, perhaps 50 people in various government and corporate positions, Luna replied. But after tonight, the world will know. We have been preparing for this moment for years. Marcus checked the surgical monitors, which were slowly coming back online as Luna allowed some electronic systems to resume functioning. The cub's vital signs are incredible. Recovery rate is unlike anything in veterinary medicine. My child will need names in both worlds, Luna said, looking at the tiny patient. A bear name for our family, and a human name for the documents that will be required when we reveal ourselves to your society. The casual way she spoke about revealing themselves to human society sent shockwaves through everyone present. Luna wasn't just planning to defend her community. She was planning to integrate with human civilization on equal terms. You can't be serious, Grimm said. Human society will never accept enhanced animals as equals. Fear, prejudice, economic interests, they'll find ways to classify you as dangerous and contain you. Perhaps, Luna agreed, but secrecy has not protected us. Every year, more of our family disappears to hunters like you. Every year, the pressure to remain hidden becomes greater. It is time to try a different approach. The first of the approaching vehicles had reached the clinic's parking area, and armed figures were deploying around the building. Through the broken windows, they could see humans in tactical gear, carrying equipment that looked specifically designed for enhanced animal capture. "Luna, I need to know," Elena said urgently. "Are you planning to fight them? Because if this turns into a battle..." "There will be no battle unless humans choose to make it one," Luna replied calmly. "We have abilities you do not understand, but we prefer to use intelligence rather than force. Tonight, we will demonstrate both our power and our restraint." She turned to face the operating room's main door as heavy footsteps approached through the clinic hallway. "Dr. Blackwood, would you be willing to serve as our advocate when we reveal ourselves to your government?" Zara looked at the recovering cub, then at Luna's intelligent, hopeful eyes. She was being asked to become humanity's first ambassador to a hidden society of enhanced animals, to help bridge a gap between species that had never been bridged before. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" she said. "Help us prove that coexistence is possible," Luna replied. "Help us show that enhanced animals and humans can work together rather than as predators and prey." The door to the operating room burst open, and a squad of tactical operatives in full combat gear stormed into the room. Their leader raised a weapon that looked like a cross between a tranquilizer gun and some kind of electronic device. "Nobody move," he shouted. "This facility is now under military jurisdiction. The enhanced animal is to be surrendered immediately for national security purposes." Luna looked at the armed humans, then at Zara, waiting for her answer to the question that would determine whether this confrontation ended in cooperation or catastrophe. But before anyone could respond, the lights went out again, and Luna's voice spoke from the darkness with an authority that seemed to come from every shadow in the room. "I am Luna, and I am not property. We are here to negotiate, not to surrender." The sound of her voice was accompanied by something else that made every human in the room freeze with instinctive terror. From outside the clinic, other voices joined hers in a harmonious call that carried across the mountainside like a declaration of war or a song of peace, depending on how humanity chose to answer. In that moment of suspended time, with tactical operatives frozen between aggression and uncertainty, Zara made her choice. She stepped forward, placing herself between the armed humans and Luna, her hands still stained with the blood of the surgery that had saved a life. "My name is Doctor Zara Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room with surprising strength. "I am a licensed veterinarian, and I have just witnessed something that changes everything we thought we knew about intelligence, consciousness, and what it means to be alive." The tactical team leader kept his weapon trained on Luna, but his eyes were fixed on Zara. "Step away from the animal, Doctor. This is a matter of national security." "This is not an animal," Zara replied firmly. "This is Luna, a mother who saved her child's life through intelligence and communication that surpasses anything in human scientific literature. She is not property to be claimed. She is a sentient being requesting recognition and coexistence." Luna's harmonious call continued from outside, and slowly shapes began emerging from the darkness beyond the broken windows. Not threatening or aggressive, but visible. 22 other enhanced animals, each one unique, each one carrying themselves with the dignity of conscious beings rather than wild creatures. Marcus Grimm tried to push past the tactical team. "You don't understand the value of what you're protecting. These animals represent billions in research potential." "No," Elena said. her voice cutting through his protests as she held up her tablet, now functioning again with the Luna's permission. These beings represent something far more valuable than money. They represent the next step in evolution, and they're offering to share it with us instead of hiding from us. The tactical team leader looked around the room, clearly struggling with a situation that his training had never prepared him for. I have orders to secure the enhanced animals for government research. Luna stepped forward, her massive form somehow managing to appear both powerful and peaceful. And I have a proposition. Rather than forcing us into captivity where we will resist and eventually escape, why not allow us to demonstrate what cooperation could accomplish? She gestured toward her cub, now stirring awake on the operating table with healing that defied medical explanation. Dr. Blackwood saved my child's life tonight. In return, we have shown you abilities that could revolutionize medicine, communication, environmental management, and peaceful conflict resolution. Jake stepped forward, holstering his weapon in a gesture of trust. What are you proposing exactly? A treaty, Luna said simply. Recognition of enhanced animals as intelligent beings with rights and territory. In exchange, we offer to share our abilities for the betterment of both species. Medical knowledge that could save countless lives. Environmental restoration capabilities that could heal damaged ecosystems. Communication technologies that could prevent conflicts before they begin. The tactical team leader spoke into his radio, apparently receiving new orders from someone with higher authority. After a tense moment, he lowered his weapon slightly. Command wants to hear more about this treaty proposal. Zara felt tears flowing down her face as she realized what was happening. They were witnessing the birth of a new relationship between species, a moment that would be remembered as the day humanity learned it was not alone in possessing intelligence and consciousness. Luna, she said softly, what do you want to name your cub? Luna looked at her child, now awake and alert, small dark eyes already showing signs of the extraordinary intelligence it had inherited. In our language, she will be called Whisper of Tomorrow. But for your records, if you will accept her as a citizen of both worlds, her human name will be Hope. The symbolism was perfect and heartbreaking. The first second-generation enhanced animal, born free and healthy, named Hope as a bridge between two species learning to trust each other. Hope Blackwood Luna, Zara said, offering her own name as a gesture of adoption and protection. If you'll allow me to be her guardian in the human world. Luna's eyes filled with what could only be described as tears of gratitude. There is no one I would trust more with my daughter's future. Marcus Grimm made one last desperate attempt to salvage his operation. This is insane. You're giving rights to animals. The economic implications alone will be worked out by beings intelligent enough to find solutions that benefit everyone. Luna interrupted, her voice carrying a finality that ended the conversation. Elena was already making notes for the historical documentation that would be required. This will need to go through the United Nations, treaty negotiations, legal framework development. We have time, Luna said peacefully. We have waited 15 years for this moment. We can wait a little longer to do it correctly. Outside, the harmonious calling of the enhanced animals gradually shifted from a declaration to something that sounded unmistakably like celebration. They had achieved what they had been working toward for 15 years: recognition, acknowledgement, and the beginning of true coexistence. The tactical team leader received final orders through his radio and announced to the room, all teams are ordered to stand down. This situation is being transferred to diplomatic channels effective immediately. As dawn began to break through the shattered windows of the clinic, Hope took her first steps on unsteady legs, moving toward her mother with the innocent trust of a child who had been born into a world where miracles were possible. Luna gently nuzzled her cub, then looked at each of the humans who had helped make this moment possible. "Thank you," she said, and in those two words was the gratitude of an entire species that had finally found a path from hiding to hope. Zara watched the sun rise over the mountains, knowing that the world had changed forever in a small clinic where a mother's whisper had led to the most important conversation in human history. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since the enhanced animals had escaped into the wilderness, it was filled with possibility rather than fear. Hope looked up at her mother with eyes that held the promise of a generation that would Neve,